teachers, and the goal of this team was really to dig into the most recent research and current practice that was out there in terms of teaching phonemic awareness, phonics, spelling, and handwriting. At the end of this work, last June, the team made some recommendations based on what they had learned in the research. As you recall, there were 4 recommendations, and they're listed here, that we have a common scope and sequence for foundational skills, that we have a common assessment that can be used to foster some great conversations at PLC levels, but also at the district level and the building level. We provide some common professional learning opportunities for teachers around foundational skills, and that we have some common materials that teachers can use in their Tier 1 instruction.
So as we were digging into kind of the scope and sequence and the materials, we realized that there was a difference between how K2 materials were designed and then their preschool counterparts. A lot of times the preschool materials weren't really designed the same way as K2, so we wanted to separate those pieces out so that the preschool could adopt a set of materials that really met the developmental needs of those kids and that really worked on oral language and the phonemic awareness skills that they needed. So we will be back on June 19th to share an update with you about the preschool pilot. So for the rest of the evening's presentation, we're just focusing on the K2 pilot that concluded just recently, a couple weeks ago. So the K2 pilot design is what we're going to share with you. We've had a long history of piloting instructional materials in Ames. This pilot has been a little bit more extensive than most, so we wanted to just recap the big pieces for you tonight. In order to select the materials, the teachers on the word study team, as well as the administrators and the TOSAs and the instructional coaches, used a portion of the Iowa Reading Research Center rubric to vet from, I think, a field of 16 materials down to the 3 that you see listed there. These are the 3 that we piloted over the past year. The phonics lessons from Fountas and Pinnell, Foundations by Wilson, and Reach into Phonics from National Geographic Learning. So for the majority of the pilot, there were 11 K2 teachers spread out over 4 buildings. There were 3 rotations so that each teacher was able to pilot each set of materials for roughly the same amount of time.
So as a portion of our pilot design, we also included was some decision-making criteria, which included the rubric scores, some student growth data, as well as some survey data. The rubric scoring replicated our PLC work in a lot of ways, one of which was a very collaborative process. After teams finished a round of looking at the materials in each round of the pilot, they came together and collaboratively discussed those materials and scored them on this rubric. It allowed for teams to remove some of the emotion that was involved, some of their personal preferences, and focus on each set of materials a little more objectively in using the rubric. And it also came to be known pretty quickly how well each member of the word study team, especially the teachers, really knew the materials after using them for that many days with students in their classrooms. You can see on this slide that there will be, at the end of this pilot, for each program there will be 8 rubrics that will be averaged together, and that will get us to the 30%. As I mentioned, there's also a student growth data piece. We were very lucky to have the Iowa Reading Research Center help us with this piece. They provided the 2 assessments, which included the QPS and the Tower assessments. They also trained our external proctors that administered and scored each of the assessments with all of the students. The data was collected 4 times throughout the pilot, 1 time at the beginning before the materials were used, and then again after each set of materials. So it was a way that we could really start to measure the growth of student success over the entire pilot. And then finally, there is some survey data that is also included. After each set of materials, each member of the word study team were able to complete a survey, a little bit more of a qualitative piece, but it was a way for us to kind of gauge some of those more personal preferences. So the teachers and coaches, administrators, and the TOSAs that were on the word study team filled out a survey after each round, as did some parents of students who were involved in the pilot classrooms.
Finally, we've had different avenues for community members to stay involved throughout the whole process. We've had a blog on our website to post updates so that everybody could be informed as to where we were as we went through the year. We also had different avenues for community members to give input, especially around feedback on their feelings and thoughts about the materials. We've had them on display several places. And we really wanted to take a minute and say thank you to everybody who took the time to fill out that feedback. We got more for this pilot than we've gotten for anything that we know about recently, so we were really happy with that. We also had presentations that came for community members so that they could understand a little bit more about the difference between the sets of materials. And then we also had teaching and learning committee meetings so that we could stay informed throughout the year. Our next step really is then to bring a final recommendation to you about which set of materials we feel after this whole process and going through our decision-making criteria is the best. We don't have that data tonight, unfortunately. We are hopeful that we will have it in a week, so we'll be back next Monday to share the data and the results and all of that with you. We have a busy day planned. We're on a tight turnaround with the data, so we have a whole day of meetings on the 12th, so we'll kind of recap those for you. Our first meeting is with the word study team, and all K2 teachers who will be implementing these materials will be invited to that meeting. So anybody K2 in the district can come to that and hear the results of the data. Then we will have a teaching and learning committee meeting from 1 to 3, and hopefully we will leave that meeting with a clear recommendation to bring to the school board. From 5 to 6, for parents and community members who are interested in digging deep into the data and the results, we'll have a meeting from 5 to 6 for that, and then at 6:30 we'll have a school board meeting. We really do want to say thank you for having an additional meeting. It's a really tight turnaround to get the materials ordered and to get them ready to go for teachers in the fall, and this will be hugely helpful for us. So, with that, that's sort of a recap of where we've been. So if you have questions.
There was some information that was shared that the parent meeting at one time was at a different location, but they're all here, I think.
Yeah, yep, the teaching and learning committee I think we're going to have in C because we have the teachers in here until 1, so we can get that started on time. That's going to be in
There's
C.
more work, but the parent meeting.
And the parent meeting is in the boardroom. Yep, here right before the school board meeting.
Comments, questions? Thanks for the update.
Aaron and Mary, you guys are awesome. You're a ray of sunshine every meeting that you speak at. Really enjoy listening to you. I'm curious, what is the impact on the students being involved in a pilot rather than going through an ordinary curriculum?
We're hoping to answer that question a little bit better at June 12th once we see some of those data points. Initially, so far, the early things that we've seen has shown that they have not suffered as a part of being in this pilot, that they've benefited from the instruction. Partly because that scope and sequence, like we've talked about before, no matter which program you have, it's really pretty research-based, that it moves along in a sequential order. And all of these programs, that's sort of why we vetted them, so that they had similar scopes and sequences, so students wouldn't suffer moving from one set of materials to another. And teachers haven't reported to us in any way that they felt like their instruction has suffered because of the students moving between those things. I don't know if we've been able to break down the FAST data yet by kids who were in the pilot versus kids who weren't, but that's one of our goals, to hopefully get that turned around as well.
That's been a common question from some parents too, that same exact, just different version of that.
And then if I can follow that up, I've always been a little curious as to why a pilot is necessary. There is apparently no uniform opinion between educators as to which curriculum is best. Is that correct?
As far as our teachers go that have piloted the materials, here's what we hear. We hear that with every set of materials, there are some great things about it, and there will be some challenges with every set of materials. So I think that's something that was a benefit to each teacher piloting each set of materials, is it kind of evened the playing field a little bit. I would say that in us digging around, we've not found anything conclusively as far as one program over another. It's kind of a mixed bag. What we hear consistently, though, is that no matter what materials you have, it's the teacher that makes the difference. It's the teacher building relationships and modifying their instruction based on what they're seeing from their students that makes the difference. And our teachers were saying, they agree with that, but it would be great to have some common materials for some common language and common conversations, and those are the pieces we're trying to provide for them. But it's really, and my belief as well, that it's the teacher that makes the difference.
So if you're sitting in my position, where I really haven't had the time or opportunity, either one, to study any of these materials, how do you put together your decision-making matrix?
How do we put it together, or how is somebody?
Yeah, how do I put it together?
Okay, so how, I mean, hopefully what we're going to need to do is to trust the data that comes in, and if it's conclusive, that would be great. That says, like, here's the one that had the most student growth, and it was also the highest rubric scoring, and it was also the one that scored highest on all of our surveys. That's our dream scenario. We did also ask the teachers, like Mary said, it comes down to the teachers and them being able to use the materials well. So at the last Word Study Team meeting, we did also say, okay, you know, we have to know which one after going through all of this and understanding the research, do you feel is best? And so we asked that question, and should the data not be conclusive, we told them that would be a piece that we will look at. There's qualitative data as well from the community that we'll look at, so we'll have to go with our best, but our best idea, I guess, at the time. Our biggest goal for this is to monitor implementation and effectiveness over the next couple of years for many different subgroups of students, so that we're making sure that what we bought is being implemented and that it is causing the increased achievement that we were hoping to see.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, what you're going to be, TLC committee and what you guys are going to be putting together, presenting to the board, you're not presenting those curriculum. You're simply providing us with program materials that implement the curriculum, correct?
Correct. We are using these to supplement the foundational skills that are the standards in the Iowa Core that are the curriculum.
Exactly. And just again, to review the sequence and the purpose, if you could describe real quick the purpose of the meetings on the 12th and which ones are and are not open to the public.
Sure. The first meeting is not open to the public. It was important. The Word Study Team has put in a lot of time and energy. We wanted them to be able to get their first eyes and understanding of the data. Also because we know that people will be asking them questions, their colleagues, and they need to be able to answer and know what's going on. So that one is not open to the public at noon. I believe the 1 to 3 o'clock meeting is open to the public, the Teaching and Learning Committee. And well, really everything but the 12 o'clock meeting is open to the public. Yes.
Just wanted to clarify.
Yep.
If the data is inconclusive with one program coming forward, would we ever consider moving to? What would be the downfall of two or trying to support both?
That's an interesting question. I think one downfall comes to this slide that Aaron just pulled back up, the fact that the teachers, one of their recommendations was they felt we were kind of scattered all over the place, and the need to be more aligned in what we were doing, that we were doing some great things in different pockets across the district, but the lack of having some common pieces to have conversations around was becoming problematic. And so their recommendations, you see the common word in all of these 4 recommendations is common. So I think that although down the road it might make sense to have more than one set of materials, I think the Word Study Team recommendations are pretty clear in what the teachers would like. But I think for sure there are pros and cons to adding other materials.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Thank you. So we'll take public comments now. We'll go through the little thing I have to say. Residents of the district, students attending the district, parents or guardians of students attending the district staff, address the board about any topic relevant to the district, whether on the current agenda or not. Those who wish to speak at the beginning of the meeting, speaker participation is limited to 3 minutes once per board meeting. The views and opinions of citizens addressing the board do not necessarily reflect those of the board, district administration, or staff. Speakers are to remember the Iowa law prohibits the board from discussing specific employees, students, or their performance. Student speakers will state their name in school, others will state their name in the And one thing I'd like to remind the public, during this time, this conversation needs to be had between you and the board and not members of the staff. So if the topic comes up, we want to have feedback, we can address those to staff members. There really needs to be your comments to us, and then go on from there. So with that, anyone like to speak on this first item? Just state your name and address.
Hi, Karen Simons, 2714 Valley View Circle. I'd like to thank Erin and Mary for all the hard work they've done over the last year and a half. They've done a really good job. I do have one question and one comment. My question is, why were there only 11 teachers if there's 4 buildings and 3 grades? What happened to that one class and that teacher? And then my other comment was, I understood them saying that it's the teacher that makes, it's more a great teacher than the material. And I don't agree with that. My daughter, Serena, she repeated kindergarten, she's profoundly dyslexic. She went to the Duffelmeyer Reading Clinic and she did Words Their Way. And Dr. Beer, one of the authors of that program, took a very special interest in her. He worked with her during that whole time, and she made very small progress. When they did the assessments with her, she had major meltdowns to the point where Dr. Beer and her tutor stopped because she couldn't do it. So I just want all of you to understand that it's not necessarily the teacher, because you could have a great teacher. You really need the right materials to teach dyslexic children to read and write. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to speak?
Good evening. Karen Stein, 2503 Ridgetop Road. And I want to ask each of you, and specifically Dr. Taylor, because you're the superintendent, the buck stops there, to please make sure that whatever program is chosen through data and so on, we don't leave children behind. We need to choose a program, as you stated back on June 20th, I believe it was the 20th, that we need to find a program that's multisensory that helps students with dyslexia and learning disabilities. I will be holding you up to that, sir. And also, I will be holding each of you who recommend whatever program comes ahead of you, because at this point I am very concerned about the other 20% students where we seem to be focusing on 80% of the students when I saw Dr. Ross in the video, with the statistics that up to 20% of our population are dyslexic. And you start putting the math together, 80%, 20%. We can't leave those children behind. We are counting on you to represent us. We're counting on you to represent our children, and not just our current students, but our future students. We have put a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars so far. Once we look at salaries, we need to make sure that we choose correctly. We need to make sure that we choose for all, not just for 80% of the students. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions?
But I just wanted to address Director Talbot's comments about how as a board you're going to make a decision if maybe the data doesn't give you one way or another. And I think in Australia our teachers do get an idea to have a preference, and they can voice that preference, but we as the teacher learning committee chosen the rubric as a way of vetting all these programs. That's a scientific research document. It has everything that a reading program should have in it. And I think we should put, if the data doesn't sway you one way or another, that is a really important piece of the information that you've got. It has everything that a reading program should have in it, and I think that's really important for you guys to look at that data and decide that that should be something that you should consider highly. We're looking at research-based data, research-based programs, and that's a big part